The day after the January 6th hearings, and what a show. I mean, that was truly incredible. And I don't know where to begin. Of course, it's Anything Goes Friday. I'll be taking your calls on, whatever you want to say or however you want to comment about this. I would remind you, my rant today over at HartmannReport.com is all about this. And I start it with an epigraph, a quote from General Winfield Scott. He was in charge of the U.S. Army in 1861. And he said, and I quote, "I have said that any man who attempted by force or unparliamentary disorder to obstruct or interfere with the lawful count of the Electoral College vote should be lashed to the muzzle of a 12-pounder gun and fired out of a window." Yeah. We once knew how to deal with treason. I thought one of the most mind-blowing things last night was when Liz Cheney told us that Representative Scott Perry was looking for a pardon. By the way, feel free to call in. I'll be picking up your calls, in a few minutes, and then it's just you and me for the whole 3 hours today. And let's just talk about this. Let's talk about where our country is, where it's going, where it's been, where it's headed, what all this means. Do you think that anything's going to come out of this? Do you know people who watched it, who changed their minds? Did your mind change? What did you think of it? I'll give you my thoughts on the production and the content. Well, I'm talking about the content right now. So anyhow, back to my rant today. Representative Scott Perry has to be quaking in his boots. This Republican congressman explicitly went to Donald Trump and said, okay, words to the effect of, we have no idea what his exact words were, but seeking a pardon for your participation in trying to overthrow the government. It's got to be something like, hey, I tried to commit treason. Will you please give me a get out of jail card? And then she says, along with multiple other members of Congress. So all these Republicans who are acting like, oh, we didn't know, and oh, it's just a spontaneous, oh, it was just a mob, oh, it was just a, what was it, Congressman Clyde from Georgia, or was it Louis Gohmert, or was it, I don't recall who it was who said, oh, it was just a typical tourist day. Yeah. No, this was sedition. Treason is when you assist a foreign government to overthrow your country, giving aid and comfort to the enemy during time of war. Sedition is the exact same thing, only done at home. Sedition is when you conspire with other Americans to overthrow the government, which is what happened. It is the most serious crime against your country that can be committed, short of treason, and treason only can be committed when you're in war. But sedition is what this is all about. This is why multiple Proud Boys and some of the other, I don't recall if it's Oath Keepers or 3%ers or maybe both, have been charged with sedition, conspiracy to commit sedition. They tried to hang the Vice President of the United States. They tried to find, kidnap, and possibly murder the Speaker of the House. And they tried to find the ballots so that they could spirit them away and they could be replaced with the phony electoral ballots that Trump and Giuliani had gotten from 5 states, or perhaps it was 6. 5 people that day, and soon thereafter 3 police officers died as a direct consequence of that violence. So you have sedition, you have attempted murder, you have destruction of property, or manslaughter anyway. You have destruction of property, assault on police officers, smearing poop on the walls of the Capitol. All of these crimes were committed in an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. And during the breaks, instead of watching the commentary from MSNBC or CNN, Louise and I turned to Fox News, during the first 10-minute break and then the break at the end. And it was astonishing. During the first 10-minute break, we turned to Fox, and here's Sean Hannity going, Nancy Pelosi could have called up the National Guard. Nancy Pelosi, or words to the effect of, this is not his exact language, but, Nancy Pelosi could have had the Sergeant at Arms protect the Capitol. Why didn't she do it? This is all Nancy Pelosi's fault. Quack, 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 quack. Completely ignoring the fact that Scott Miller, Donald Trump's acting Secretary of Defense, had issued a memo 2 days before saying that on January 6th, the National Guard was not to provide. You'll recall, we've been through this memo at least a dozen times in the last year. was not to provide any assistance to the Capitol Police. They were restrained. And by the way, the National Guard does not answer to Nancy Pelosi. It answers to Donald Trump. And he didn't lift a finger at all, ever on that day. Not once. In fact, he was apparently gleeful about it. And then after the show was over, we flipped back over to Fox, and here's Laura Ingraham going, how is it, or where's the effect of, this is, again, not a verbatim quote, but how is it that a guy putting his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk means that he's overthrowing the government? How do you overthrow the government doing that? This is silly. Right. So now it appears that we have 3 levels of criminality here, at least culpability, as I wrote at Hartmann Report today, HartmannReport.com. There's the man at the top, Donald Trump, who helped organize and encourage the entire operation. There were elected Republican officials ranging from members of the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. We haven't gotten to Tommy Tuberville yet, or Tuberville. All the way down to the individual state houses forging electoral college certificates, who organized and executed the political part of this crime. And then there were the white supremacist militia members and the loyal followers of this viciously racist president who organized violence intended to stop the county electoral college vote, even if that meant murdering our vice president. And then third, there were those in the media and their allies in Congress who are committed to an ongoing cover-up of the crime, which is, as Travis Geddes writes over at Raw Story, you know, Fox News did something worse than merely ignoring January 6th. They actively participated in a cover-up last night. I saw it with my own eyes. I was astonished. You know, our first president, George Washington, warned us of this in his farewell address of 1796, which was ghostwritten by Alexander Hamilton, but absolutely expressed Washington's sentiments. He was a great general. He was not a particularly good writer, but he knew what he wanted to say, and Alexander Hamilton put it into prose. And he said, the unity of government which constitutes you one people is also now dear to you, but it is easy to foresee. Oh, did this guy have a time machine, or did he just understand human nature? But it is easy to foresee that from different causes and from different quarters, much pains will be taken, many sacrifices employed to weaken in your minds the conviction of this truth. In other words, the truth that we are one people. As this is the point in your political fortress against which the batteries of internal and external enemies will most be constantly and actively through covert and insidious means directed. Which is exactly what's going on. It is of infinite moment, Washington warned us, in other words, importance, that you should properly estimate the immense value of your national union to your collective and individual happiness, that you should cherish a cordial, habitual, and immovable attachment to it, accustoming yourselves to think and speak of it as the palladium of your political safety and prosperity. But then came the warning, right? For most of our political history, with the exception of the Civil War era, we had Republicans and Democrats and other parties, the Whigs, the Federalists, coming together to pass legislation that improved America, that made America better, and that all came to an end with the Reagan Revolution. For 40 years, we have had legislative gridlock in Congress. And it's because in 1978, Lewis Powell wrote the Supreme Court decision that legalized corporate bribery of politicians. President George Washington said, watching for our nation and our democracy's preservation with jealous anxiety, discountenancing whatever may suggest even a suspicion that it can in any event be abandoned, and indignantly frowning upon the first dawning of every attempt to alienate any portion of our country from the rest or to enfeeble the sacred ties which now link together the various parts. We have to watch out for this. And we now have entire media organizations that are dedicated just to doing that. There will always be reasons, George Washington warned us, to distrust the patriotism of those who in any quarter may endeavor to weaken its bands. One of the expedients of party is to acquire influence within particular districts to misrepresent the opinions and aims of other districts. Washington went on, respect for our nation's authority, compliance with its laws, acquiescence in its measures are duties enjoined by the fundamental maxims of true liberty. He said the basis of our political system is the right of the people to make and to alter their constitutions of government. But the Constitution, which at any time exists till changed by an explicit and authentic act of the whole people, is sacredly obligatory upon all of us. All obstructions to the execution of the laws, this is George Washington, all combinations and associations under whatever plausible character, with the real design to direct, control, counteract, or awe the regular deliberation and action of the constituted authorities, are destructive of this fundamental principle and a fatal tendency. He went on to say, cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which have lifted them to unjust domination. I'll stop there. If you want to read George Washington's stuff, you can read it over at HartmannReport.com. But, you know, he gets very clear about what happened last night. So what were the highlights for you? I thought that Officer Edwards, I thought her testimony, Carolyn Edwards, U.S. Capitol Police Officer Carolyn Edwards, I thought her testimony was amazing. Bill Barr saying it's BS that Trump lost the election. The internal Trump election guy, the guy who worked in the White House and did the polling and did all the number crunching, he told Trump he was losing the election before it was even called. Trump knew he lost this election. Everybody told him this. His vice president told him this. His attorney general told him this. His numbers guy told him this. His daughter told him this. Nick Quested, the guy who filmed the Proud Boys, documented that this was not an accident. They intended to attack the Capitol. They didn't, you know, the Proud Boys didn't even go to the Trump rally. They started at the Ellipse at the Washington Monument at 10 a.m. and then marched to the Capitol and attacked it. They literally didn't go to the rally, blowing up another big lie.